right. So I understand today's the day leaders are giving their opinions on how things are going. It's always a little frustrating on the last day of session when we have to go into a special session to finish work up. I don't think we really have the luxury of doing the blame game and, spin room. I think certainly I understand people's desire to do that, and some of our members will be talking to you later about their frustrations. But what I'm really focused on here in the waning hours of the regular session in 2025 are finishing up those things we can finish up and resolving conflict instead of starting new conflict or fanning the flames of conflict that's already going on. So happy to take questions.
Are we going to have conferees on education and taxes before adjournment?
Well, they won't be conferees exactly. They'll be work group appointees. And so we're going to ask them to function somewhat like a conference committee functions, asking them to have some public meetings and to exchange offers. All the leaders will be meeting this afternoon and then probably again tomorrow morning to finalize a special session work plan where we are on a path to get the whole remainder of the work finished up by June 1st. So I know before I said I had hoped we'd do it one day before Memorial Day weekend. I still hope that we will do that. But there's a really more serious deadline in our future, and that is June 1st, because if we don't have everything passed and enacted into law by then we have to send layoff notices. And there's not only a financial cost to that, there's a human cost. It makes people pretty stressed out. So my hope is that we'll be done as soon as possible. By the end of this week would be fantastic, but no later than May 31st.
It sounded like last week there was a deal in place, everybody was pretty hopeful we would go quickly, but there's just been a lot of change, it seems like. What do you think happened? What can you explain to people at home and wondering what happened?
I don't think there's change, really. We have a deal. We have a full budget deal. We have discussed at the leadership table that where we don't have agreement on policy, nothing can happen. We fully debated at the leadership table GOP requests to change paid family medical leave, the Nursing Home Workforce Standards Board. We fully dealt with their issues on reinsurance. I think they had a couple other matters, and we got as far as we could get. And then, going any further is really off the table because we just don't have agreement and we don't have time.
What is the agreement on paid family leave? What is the agreement?
The agreement is that instead of the top premium charge being 1.2%, it is 1.1%.
But Damith is now saying because Senator Judy Seeberger wants maybe deeper cuts, that's all back on the table, and that was not part of the agreement originally. That's what she said today.
I expect Representative Damith to honor her word.
What's the agreement on private school funding?
We didn't specifically address that at the leadership table, but when we were talking about what should the E12 target be, it was very clear that Republicans opposed tapping the non-public pupil aids and the charter school facilities aid. So we think that those things are highly unlikely to end up in the E12 bill, but that's really up to the folks who will work on that bill.
What are some of the frustrations in your own caucus that are holding things up, and how much do you think they'll continue to hold things up?
Well, I think our folks are frustrated that we're not going to be done in the regular session. I think they're frustrated that there's been some games, but that's kind of always an end of the session thing. I think they're frustrated at some last-minute demands related to elections and related to higher education that don't pertain to the budget deal that we reached. I think folks are anxious to get those budget deals across the finish line.
Are you satisfied with the amount of transparency?
What do you mean exactly, Eric?
Well, that the public or the reporters could know what's going on.
Well, I think that we've had some conference committees do a lot of work in public, and some conference committees do less work in public. Certainly the leadership negotiations have never been public. I think Palenti tried a little bit, and when the cameras were in the room, not much got done. I think when Mark Dayton and Kurt Dowd try to do some things publicly, it just doesn't work because you need people to be able to say what's their bottom line and to make their emotional pitch and to say where their caucus is and say where their votes are. And people have to really show their cards. So that is a space that has not ever and probably will not ever be transparent.
I apologize because I arrived a few minutes late, but what do you think for the special session trajectory? Do you still think one day is possible, or do you think it depends on how things shake out over today?
Well, the governor has to agree to the special session deal, right? So right now we have a budget deal, but after the regular session ends, the legislature won't be meeting, and they will not be permitted to meet again until the governor calls us into special session. He won't call us in until we have an agreement about when it is and what the topics are. So I am thinking that what he will agree to is one day. However, it depends on how much consternation there is in various caucuses. It could take 3 days because you have to suspend the rules to move quickly. So, for example, if Mark Johnson doesn't want to agree to suspend the rules to help Aaron Murphy turn a 3-day special session into a 1-day special session, it could have to be 3 days. We did that. Certainly, Paul Gazelka and I, working together, did a 3-day special session, I think, in 2020.
But you hope that before Memorial Day weekend would be your goal.
We should be able to do that, but teams don't seem to be working as fast this year as they did in 2019. In 2019, I think the Republican-led Senate and the DFL-led House seem to be working a little bit more quickly than the constellation we have right now.
What other conference committee reports do you expect we'll see by the end of the day today, if any?
We're hoping for higher education, environment, and state government. But we'll just have to see if those folks can finish their work. I would think if I were one of those people, I'd really want to finish my work so that I didn't have to work tomorrow, and that I could be out like mowing my grass and maybe seeing my family while the taxes people and the E12 people are still hard at work in the salt mines. But if environment and state government and higher ed are not done, then they'll just have to keep at it.
You kind of talked about this at the start, but Peter Murphy earlier today was kind of saying that she feels the House is holding some things here, stalling some things. I mean, is that...
I think she meant the
that?
House GOP.
Okay.
I think she's a little irritated about some of the late requests on policy in environment and policy-related issue in higher education, the Regents issue suddenly being injected. I think she's a little frustrated that there's a policy demand in environment that's preventing that bill from closing too. So, but those are requests made by House GOP. The House DFL, we are ready to close all these bills. We have a budget agreement. Our job this year is to pass a state budget. And so there's really no excuse to let any of these partisan policy differences get in the way of passing the budget right now.
Do you share those frustrations?
No, but I'm used to being frustrated by the end of session. I remember at the end of 2022, I was deeply frustrated. I had this great $12 billion deal with Jeremy Miller, and it was falling apart all around us. And so I learned then that, the end of session is just going to be what it is, and you can be irritated by it, but it's not going to make it any better.
So what's the trajectory for Minnesota Care for Undocumented Adults? So that travels alone, but you have commitments from your caucus to pass the health budget without that?
We haven't worked out the logistical details, Leader Dameth and Leader Murphy and myself yet, of how that's going to work. The health budget we can't jump into that until the Senate chair is done with the children and families budget and the reinsurance issue and then some miscellaneous health stuff. So that's like 12 to 24 hours down the road conversation about exactly how those will be laid out.
Do you think it'll be a late night, or will at a certain point you throw in the towel if you can't finish everything today and you're going to inevitably have a special session?
I think we will run out of things to do early this evening, and although it might feel good to stay until midnight, if there's nothing to do at a certain point, we'll probably just adjourn.
Do you want the governor to call you back at 12:01? Peleni did it a couple times, Ventura.
Wasn't that, so I think Tim Peleni, looking back, would say that was the biggest mistake he ever made. I can't remember if Mark Dayton ever did it. But I think the advice that Tim Peleni gave his successors is never do that, and I don't think Tim Walz will make that mistake.
How would you characterize this session as Leader Murphy's called it a difficult session? Do you have
Well, I think the most difficult session was 2020 when we closed down on March 13th because COVID was raging across the planet, and we didn't know whether if we came in we would be putting our staff's lives in jeopardy. I think certainly the challenges we dealt with in 2020 were more difficult. And then with the summer of civil unrest after the murder of George Floyd, I would say was a lot more difficult. We've got a budget deal here. There's some people who are being frustrating, but we'll get through it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.